The first thing I heard that morning wasn't the coffee pot gurgling or birds outside, just the ping of a message slicing through silence like a scalpel through skin. I flipped the phone over, still half asleep, expecting something mundane. Instead, 7 words detonated 33 years of marriage. We need space. I'm staying another week. I read it once. Then again. Each syllable landed like a soft slap, but it was the absence of punctuation that hit hardest. No greeting. No signature. Not even a question mark. Just a verdict. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't rush to reply. I just stood there, holding it. The coffee dripped behind me like some kind of slow, sarcastic applause. Valerie, my wife of over 3 decades, was in Cabo, supposedly with women from her yoga class. Self-care, she called it. Refilling my cup. Apparently, she decided to do it with tequila and sunshine, now with space, too. Whatever that meant. And here's the thing. I wasn't shocked. Not really. I opened the bottom drawer of the file cabinet in the den, pulled out a slim blue folder labeled Title and Transfer. I had prepared it years ago, not out of paranoia, but out of habit. You don't spend a lifetime in inspection work without keeping your paperwork airtight. Just in case. This wasn't rage. This wasn't heartbreak. It was deployment. A different kind of man might have driven to the airport, demanded answers, begged for love. I called my realtor instead. By the way, if this already has you gritting your teeth or nodding quietly, do one small thing for me. Subscribe. I know 98% of folks scroll through these stories without hitting that button, but it fuels our whole team. And trust me, this one's just getting started. Anyway, Valerie didn't follow up. Didn't ask if I got the message. Didn't check on anything back home. Didn't ask how the dog was, though we didn't have one. Not anymore. She never noticed I stopped mentioning him. I made 2 calls. The realtor I'd used for my cousin's estate. A moving company I had bookmarked out of curiosity last winter. Funny how the subconscious preps you for things before your pride catches on. By noon, the ball was rolling. No drama. No back and forth. Just deadlines and signatures. And while she was sipping overpriced cocktails, I was marking boxes, his and hers. Guess which pile was heavier? But the weirdest thing, the part one didn't expect, was the calm. It wasn't numbness. It wasn't some Zen detachment. It was clarity. Cold. Focused. Almost surgical. I walked past the wedding photo on the wall, us in Tahoe, 1991, and didn't even pause. I didn't have to. I'd already packed the memories I needed. Everything else was clutter. I boxed up her yoga mats, essential oils, faux crystal wine stoppers, and that ridiculous brass flamingo she brought home from Sedona. Each item made me laugh a little louder. I was polite with the movers. Tipped extra. Labeled everything clearly. There was no need to hide what was happening. No shouting match. No apology letters. Just one man respecting a message for exactly what it said. She wanted space. And I was going to give her all of it. The odd part, there was no moment where I debated texting her back. Not even a draft that sat unsent. My thumbs never hovered. My jaw never clenched. She said she needed space. And I'd spent so many years not taking up space in my own damn house that honoring her wish felt like muscle memory. No questions. No counterarguments. No guilt. I turned off my phone, set it face down, and opened the notepad by the fridge, the one we used for groceries and chore reminders. Wrote 3 items. Call Marcus, realtor. Schedule movers. Shred photo albums. That third one sat there like a dare. I left it uncrossed. By noon, Marcus had already found an interested couple, newlyweds from Glendale. Offered a cash deal. Wanted a quick close. I told him I'd be out in 6 days. That's unusually fast, he said. That's what she wanted. I replied, then asked for electronic forms. No small talk. I didn't know the world an explanation. I called a moving service next. Told them I needed 2 trucks. One to a storage unit I'd already reserved. The other headed up north. They said Saturday worked. I said perfect. Valerie, for all her spiritual mantras and healing stones, never once asked what I was up to. Never noticed the banking notification stopped. Never questioned why Karen hadn't texted in 2 weeks. She'd gone from we to me like it was some kind of enlightenment. Left me to wander our house with its peeling baseboards and crooked cabinet handles and remember how many of those imperfections she once called homey. Now, They were just blemishes. Leftovers. And I wasn't angry about it. That was the worst part. I was done being angry. The day she left for Cabo, she didn't kiss me goodbye. She tapped her phone to the Uber app, adjusted her sunglasses, and said, "Don't forget to water the succulents." That was her version of closure. So I began giving her mine. I walked room to room and sorted everything with military precision. Her closet? 3 suitcases. Mine? 1 duffel and a garment bag. I donated her books, most of them unread. Those overly complicated cookbooks with pictures of meals she never made? Dumped them in a donation bin by the grocery store. I canceled cable, transferred utilities, updated my address with the post office online. Old habits die hard. She wouldn't know, because she didn't ask. And I wouldn't tell her, because there was nothing left to tell. I stood in the garage that evening, looking at her collection of upcycled art projects and half-finished DIYs, and finally tossed the lot. Even the garden Buddha, the one that sat crooked because she insisted imperfection was beautiful. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt efficient. It was as if my grief had put on a uniform and clocked in. No lunch breaks. No union. Just task after task after task. I even started sleeping in the guest room. Not out of spite, but because I didn't want to dream in a bed where the other side had gone cold years ago. I laid flat on that twin mattress, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above like a broken compass, and I realized something. She didn't just ask for space. She'd been building it for years. One silent dinner at a time. One, "I'm tired," after another. One unanswered laugh across the room while she scrolled on her phone. So no, there would be no final talk. No dramatic confrontation in an airport terminal. No, we can work this out. Only silence. A heavy, deliberate silence. And it was finally mine. That afternoon, while I was wrapping the last of her yoga trophies in newspaper. Yes, she had actual trophies for mindfulness. Go figure. My phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I hadn't turned it back on for any specific reason. Maybe I wanted to confirm the moving schedule. Maybe I was hoping Karen had replied to the message I sent her about where to forward mail. Instead, it was Valerie's name. But not a call. Not even a text. She'd posted. Instagram. Public. A photo. She was in a red bikini I didn't recognize. Probably new, probably overpriced. Sitting poolside with a margarita, the salted rim glistening like it had a better marriage than we did. And there, behind her shoulder, half out of frame, but not far enough, a man's shadow. Elbows rested on the glass table. Right arm curled in toward his lap, like he was leaning in close. The caption? Sometimes space brings clarity. And better company. Sun cocktail glass. My thumb didn't shake. My jaw didn't lock. I just zoomed in. Twice. That shoulder. That wristwatch. That particular smug lean. Wade. Of course. Freaking Wade. Her, just a friend from Phoenix. The one who used to work with her when she was still at the logistics firm. The one who sent her a Christmas card 4 years ago with the note. You always made the long days feel short. Love always, W. And the kicker? He accidentally signed it with a heart. She claimed it was just a printing error. That I was being dramatic. Paranoid. It's just a card, Harold. I'd almost believed her. But I'm a retired inspector, not a toddler. I knew the smell of BS before it entered the room. I screenshotted the photo. Not to confront her. Not to throw it in her face. I wasn't about to bark at a door she already slammed shut. I opened my files instead. Years ago, when we first put the house into trust, I built in what I jokingly called a silent ignition clause. If certain conditions were met, infidelity, abandonment, or, say, a public broadcast of marital humiliation, the trust could be triggered by a single signature and converted into exclusive control by me, for the benefit of Karen. I hadn't looked at the paperwork in a while, but now I did. Every clause, every technicality, every silent, sterile safeguard I had built into it back when we still wore matching robes on Sundays. Wait, that man had always lingered like a spoiled smell. Now he was front and center, clinking glasses with my wife while she toasted to clarity. I opened a new tab. Emailed my attorney. Subject line. Initiate clause C. Immediate. Attached. The screenshot. No message body. None needed. He replied 6 minutes later. Copy. I'll begin transfer procedures immediately. Cold ignition. Everything shifted then. The house would no longer be hers to come back to. The bills? Forwarded to my name, but the utilities in hers, thanks to a form I updated online that morning. The garage code? Reset. And the cherry on top? Her mail, forwarded not to the Montana address I'd soon disappear to, but to a secure P.O. box registered under the trust name. She'd have to earn access to even read a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. I walked back into the bedroom she hadn't slept in for months and unhooked the oil painting she loved. Some abstract mess she claimed represented rebirth. I took it outside and leaned it next to the trash bin. Not destroyed, just irrelevant. Like her promises, like her vows. I didn't feel vengeance. I didn't feel rage. Those are luxuries for people still trying to win. I wasn't playing anymore. She wanted better company? Let her keep it. Because soon, she'd be keeping a whole lot more than she bargained for, including every single suitcase she left behind. The office hadn't changed. Same over-air-conditioned chill, same leather chairs that tried to feel expensive but ended up smelling faintly like mildew and printer toner. Harold sat across from Jean, the kind of lawyer who'd never smiled unprompted in 30 years but could dismantle a financial corpse with surgical precision. Jean flipped through the binder. Clause C.3, triggered by public evidence of infidelity or spousal abandonment. He glanced up, adjusting his glasses. That Instagram post will suffice. Harold nodded once. No triumph. No gloating. Just business. The trust had been drafted a decade ago under the guise of estate planning, to protect Karen's future. What Valerie didn't realize was that it also protected Harold's dignity and his exit strategy. Clause C was never discussed out loud. Not even with Valerie. Especially not with Valerie. The trust was a living thing, dormant until disrespected. And she'd activated it with a cocktail and a caption. I'll start the legal filing. You'll receive the deed transfer confirmation within 48 hours, Jean said. Harold slid over an envelope with a check already signed. Make it 24. Done. By noon, the house, their house, was no longer in her reach. Not legally, not emotionally, not even spiritually. Harold had filed the change of ownership paperwork through a shell-holding company tied to the trust. If Valerie ever tried to contest it, she'd have to get through a 6-layer firewall of LLCs and estate protections. Spoiler, she wouldn't. The home insurance? Terminated under his name. Reissued under the trust. The joint credit card she never stopped using? Cancelled. And reissued as a solo card, on his end. He called the power company. Then water. Then internet. Everything flipped. Everything silenced. Except the soft rustle of trash bags filling up in the guest room. He spent that afternoon tagging every single item she'd left behind. Not angrily. Precisely. Like evidence in a sealed case. 3 monogrammed suitcases. 1 carry-on. A box labeled Spa Essentials, filled with facial rollers and half-used creams. And 1 ridiculous beach hat with the word blessed stitched across the brim. Each one got a sticky note. Valerie G. Do not discard. He lined them up by the front hallway. Not outside. Not yet. That came later. But they'd be waiting. He pulled the spare key from the bowl near the door, the one she used to call the marriage bowl. Tossed it into a manila envelope. Slid that into a lockbox with the realtor's name on it. He looked around the house. It was hollowing itself out. A wedding photo on the wall. Gone. The love seat she picked out because it felt like a hug. Donated. The echo was growing louder in every room. An echo of what had been rather than what was. Still, the most satisfying moment came when Harold opened the safe under the stairs. Inside was a file labeled Emergency Protocol, Karen. He'd written it years ago, thinking maybe it would be for a fire, a health scare, or the unthinkable. But this was different. He updated one sheet, added today's date, and attached the screenshot of Valerie and Wade poolside, sipping betrayal in high definition. He resealed the folder and left it in the safe. No need to show it to Karen, yet. She deserved truth, but not all at once. She'd know when it mattered. Then he returned to the kitchen and finished labeling the last box. It read, Miscellaneous, Ghosts. He smiled at that one, just slightly. Paperwork doesn't heal you. It doesn't hug you or whisper apologies. But it does something better. It protects you. It gives you a shield when the person you trusted most hands you a dagger. And now, everything was activated. Everything she thought she could come back to was already gone. Karen pulled into the driveway slowly, her tires crunching over the grit that used to collect beneath Valerie's Lexus. The familiar sound of home, but home wasn't there anymore. Just a hollowing shell with taped boxes stacked like memorials in the garage. Harold met her outside before she could knock. She stepped out of her car and hugged him hard. Tighter than usual. She really said she needed space from you. She asked, voice low, like it physically hurt her to say it out loud. He just nodded. Karen's eyes scanned the porch. Her mom's garden chimes were gone. The chair cushions she used to hate were stacked by the trash. It was all happening too fast, and yet it felt like it had been coming for years. They walked inside together. The air inside was already different. You could smell departure. She stepped into the living room, stopped in front of the wall where the family photo collage had once hung, just nails and outlines remaining. You did all this in 5 days? Harold gave her a tight shrug. I've had practice being ignored. It makes you good with time management. It was the closest he'd come to a joke in weeks. She didn't laugh. Her mouth twisted, but it didn't reach her eyes. Karen walked from room to room, arms folded, taking it all in. The dining table she'd grown up eating at was already disassembled, chairs upside down like fallen soldiers. Her old bedroom had been cleared except for a folded letter on the nightstand, college memories, probably. Maybe Harold thought she might want it. She sat down on the steps and looked at him. Where are you going, Dad? He stayed standing. Montana. That surprised her. Why Montana? I want mountains. I want quiet. I want a place where if someone needs space, they have to hike 2 miles just to find a signal. She stared at him for a moment. You told Mom? No. Are you going to? He looked at the half-empty hallway, where Valerie's bags sat prepped like unclaimed luggage at a bus terminal. No. Karen nodded, then stood, walked over, hugged him again. Then tell me, where exactly are you going? I'll keep it between us. Cross my heart. He pulled out a sticky note from his back pocket and handed it to her. She read it, an address with no zip code, just a cabin name and a dirt road description. You're really doing this, she whispered. Harold didn't answer. She slipped the note into her wallet like it was a sacred map. You're not alone, okay? I know, he said. Then she looked over at the suitcases again. You want me to be here when she shows up? No. You sure? Yeah, he said. She needs to see the house alone. Feel it. Karen hesitated, then nodded. If she calls me, I'm not answering. Not at first. Smart. They walked out to her car. Before she got in, she paused. I don't think I ever saw you look this clear. Harold squinted at the sunlight. It's amazing what happens when the fog lifts. Karen drove off, glancing back in the mirror only once. Harold didn't wave. He walked back into the house, past the boxes, past the memories, and sat in the single kitchen chair left behind. He poured himself a whiskey midday, unapologetic. For the first time since she sent that message, he wasn't reacting. He was just waiting. The guest room had never felt like a room. It was where forgotten towels went to die, where mismatched pillowcases lived out their exile, where holiday guests slept once every other year. And now it was Harold's sanctuary, at least for one last night. He didn't bother with the bed frame, just the mattress. On the floor. No sheets, no frills. A single pillow that still smelled faintly like dust and lavender. Valerie's doing, of course. She had a thing for sachets. Said they softened the energy. Now the energy was stripped bare. Just drywall, shadows, and silence. The house echoed with a hollowness he hadn't heard in years. A refrigerator door that creaked louder than usual. The hum of a water heater now louder than conversation had been for the past decade. He didn't cook dinner. Just heated up a can of soup and ate it over the sink. Old habit from his bachelor days. Full circle, he guessed. Around midnight, he walked through each room with a mental checklist. Not for things left behind, but to confirm he was really leaving. The living room? Empty. Not even a rug. Kitchen? Barren. Aside from one stubborn spoon in the dishwasher he left deliberately, like a fingerprint. Karen's room? Cleared out. Door left ajar. Light bulb unscrewed just enough so it wouldn't flicker again like it had since 2009. And then the bedroom. Their bedroom. He hadn't stepped in it for a week. Avoided it like a grave. But now he owed it one last glance. He entered without touching the doorframe. The bed was gone. Dresser too. All that remained was a dusty circle where her Himalayan salt lamp used to sit and a single framed photo on the wall. Their 25th anniversary. Lake Tahoe. Her in a blue shawl. Him in a suit that barely fit. They were smiling. He walked up to it, took it down, stared. They weren't smiling because they were happy. They were smiling because they had guessed taking the photo. You can always tell. He flipped the frame over and opened the latch. Slid the photo out. Put it into the box he'd labeled earlier, donate. The frame? He tossed it in the trash. Closure doesn't always come with a dramatic speech. Sometimes it comes with routine. With scissors cutting through duct tape. With the sound of a Sharpa labeling what used to be love as miscellaneous. By 5:30 a.m., the sun had started to blush against the horizon. A soft, rose-colored warning that a new day had no intention of waiting for him. He stood in the foyer one last time. The light switch plate still had the chip from when Valerie dropped a blender box against it on move-in day. He used to joke they should fix it. Now, he let it be. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. Inside, keys, garage remote, instructions for the new owners. A note thanking them for their offer and wishing them a peaceful home. He walked outside. No ceremony. Placed the envelope in the mailbox. Closed the lid. Exhaled. Then he turned back, looked at his house, for exactly 3 seconds. Not for nostalgia. Not for regret. Just confirmation. That he was no longer tethered to it. No longer tethered to her. He slid into his car, turned the ignition, and pulled out of the driveway for the last time. Behind him, the house stood still. In front of him, a long, winding road led north. Valerie breezed through customs like she always did. Lip gloss perfect, tongue glowing. The kind of woman who made airport strangers think divorcee energy, even when she wasn't technically divorced. Yet, she'd texted Harold once mid-trip. Just a casual, maybe we should talk when I get back. No response. She assumed he was sulking. Or pretending to be busy. Either way, she had her narrative ready. How she needed space to reevaluate, and felt neglected, and just wanted to be heard. She even rehearsed it in the cab. I just wanted us both to grow. Translation, I had a fling with Wade, and thought you'd wait quietly while I figured out if it meant anything. The driver took a wrong turn, and Valerie snapped. It's the beige house with the stone planters. Right on Larkspur. You'll see the succulents. But when the car slowed at the curb, her brow furrowed. Something was off. There were bags. Her bags. Lined up in a perfect row on the lawn like forgotten luggage at a hotel pickup. 3 monogrammed suitcases. 1 garment bag. Even her ridiculous Sedona hat. The one that said blessed in cursive. Rested like a crown on the smallest carry-on. The porch light? Gone. Just an empty bracket and a dangling wire. Her pulse jumped. Not fear. Not yet. Just confusion wrapped in ego. She stepped out, heels clicking too confidently, and dragged one of the suitcases behind her. Walked up to the door and typed the garage code. Nothing. She frowned, then tried her key. Deadbolt didn't budge. He changed the locks. No warning. No drama. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Nothing but birdsong and a distant lawnmower. That's when a man across the street, khakis, visor, typical HOA gatekeeper, called out from his driveway. You looking for the Garcias? She blinked, mouth halfway open. What? The Garcias. They moved in yesterday. Nice couple. Said they just relocated from Orange County. Her jaw locked. This is 312 Larkspur. Was. Closed escrow 2 days ago. Moving truck came at dawn. She blinked again. This is my house. The man gave her a half-sympathetic smile. Guess not anymore. Then he turned and walked back into his garage like it was just another Tuesday. Valerie stood frozen on the porch. Her phone was already in her hand, dialed to Harold. Voicemail. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. She tapped open her texts. Nothing but the old ones, unread. Then she called Karen. Karen answered. Barely. Mom. Karen. I just got back and there are strangers in my house and my stuff is on the lawn. Karen didn't interrupt. She didn't sigh. She just waited like a judge waiting to deliver a sentence. I said I needed space. Valerie snapped, her voice cracking. Not exile. Karen's voice dropped a few degrees. Then maybe you shouldn't have used Cabo as your confessional. I wanted to talk things through. You wanted a trial separation while you played house with Wade. Valerie froze. Karen continued. You assumed Dad would just sit still? He didn't. And honestly, good for him. Then, click. Call ended. Valerie's hand fell to her side, phone dangling, mouth dry. She sat on her suitcase. The tan she had spent 8 days perfecting now looked ridiculous under the hard light of rejection. The neighbors were peeking out windows. Curtains twitched. For the first time in years, Valerie had no script. No control. No audience. Just consequences. Valerie paced the sidewalk in front of the house that used to be hers. Barefoot now, her wedges abandoned in the grass beside her luggage. Sweat prickled along her collarbone despite the breeze. Her once effortless confidence had curdled into something brittle. Twitchy. Pathetic. Even. She tapped Harold's name again. Straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. The tone alone was humiliation enough. She scrolled to Karen next, teeth clenched. Her hands were trembling now, though she'd never admit it. Not fear, she told herself. Frustration. She had questions. She deserved explanations. Karen picked up on the second ring. Karen, I don't know what. Mom. That voice. Flat. Measured. Already exhausted. I just got here and what the hell is going on? My things are outside. The locks are changed. There's a new family in the house, and they told me escrow closed. I never even know. Karen didn't interrupt. She waited for the tantrum to bleed out. Valerie's voice cracked. He can't just erase me. Mom, Karen said again, softer, but somehow sharper. I don't know what you expected. I expected a conversation. I expected we'd talk like adults. No, you expected to vanish for 10 days with Wade the spa Buddha and come home to the same porch swing and doormat like nothing happened. Valerie's jaw dropped. It wasn't like that. Karen let out a dry laugh. You posted a picture. A caption. With clarity and better company. What did you think would happen? He'd paint the living room and thank you for the emotional growth? I said I needed space. Not exile. Karen didn't hesitate this time. Then maybe, she said, voice like sleet. You should have booked round-trip clarity. Click. No goodbye. No warning. Just the sound of disconnection cutting cleaner than any blade. Valerie stared at her phone screen. She tried redialing, but it was pointless. Karen wouldn't pick up again. That door had closed, and not softly. She stood there for several minutes, trying to slow her breathing, as neighbors peeked out behind blinds with pity and judgment blurred into one expression. The new homeowners hadn't come outside yet. She wasn't sure if they were even home. But their car was there. Their porch plants were different. There was a child's bicycle by the garage. The life she'd once cultivated had been replanted, and she wasn't part of the garden anymore. She opened Uber. No rides available for 20 minutes. She was stuck. On the curb. Like a forgotten guest at her own funeral. Valerie sat back down on her suitcase, legs crossed tightly, arms folded, eyes darting like a cage thing. Where was her power? Her narrative? Where was the loving husband waiting with tea and questions, willing to forgive, willing to try? Gone. Gone like the utilities, the credit line, the door code. Gone like Harold, who, it now dawned on her, hadn't left because she cheated. He'd left because she had already been gone for years. She just didn't notice until she found herself locked out. No one came to help. No one came to explain. Just the wind, a dog barking somewhere distant, and a row of suitcases whispering. You did this. You left. And he believed you. She was still on the lawn when the Uber finally arrived, but she didn't get in. Something in her gut told her that escaping the street wouldn't fix what was now following her. So instead of giving the driver a destination, she waved him off and sat back down on her suitcase like it was a throne of ruined assumptions. Her phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Harold, dentist, reschedule. She stared at it for a long time, like it had been written in a foreign language. Then, almost without thinking, she opened her browser and typed the address. Just to confirm something. Anything. Some version of events where this was all some mistake. A misunderstanding. Maybe the buyers were squatters. Maybe Harold had lost his mind. Maybe this was reversible. She clicked on a real estate link. The house appeared in crisp, staged lighting. Photos taken clearly after she left. Furniture she didn't recognize. Clean lines where their clutter once lived. Listing status, sold. Finalized, 3 days ago. Terms, cash. Immediate possession. Seller, H. Granger Trust. Her chest tightened. Trust? She scrolled down, scanning the fine print. Seller relocated for personal clarity. Property is now under new ownership. No contingencies. Clean exit. Motivated seller preferred solitude and peace. She blinked hard. That wasn't legal boilerplate. That was a message. She clicked the agent's name and followed the breadcrumb trail to a newsletter they'd written, something fluffy for their high-end client base. It read, "Sometimes the cleanest sales come from the quietest exits. One of my latest clients chose peace over conflict. A retired gentleman with old-school dignity and a northern destination. He requested that all closing documents reflect his privacy." Attached was a blurry shot of a cabin in Montana. Mountains in the background. Snow lingering on the pine. Below it, in smaller font, mail forwarding address on file. Cabin 12B, Stillwater Ridge, MT. Care of H. Granger Trust. Valerie's breath caught in her throat. He was gone. Not hiding. Not seething. Not waiting for her to crawl back. Gone. The name of the trust, Granger, hit like a slap. That had been his grandfather's surname. One he never used unless something was serious, something was being locked down. He'd used it for the trust, for the account she was never listed on, the one she used to tease him about. "What's the point of planning for things that'll never happen?" she'd once said, sipping wine on their anniversary. Turns out, the point was this. She tried to search more, property records, any document that had her name on it. There was nothing. No joint anything. No co-owner. No appeal process. He hadn't just left. He prepared to leave years ago. The trust was only visible in public documents because it had to be for the sale. Everything else, his financials, his address history, even his phone number, had quietly vanished behind legal walls. She clicked to see the buyer documents. Nothing accessible. But under additional seller notes, there was one single sentence. "All remaining personal effects have been returned to their rightful owner." Her gaze slid back to the luggage. The tan lines on her feet started to sting. Her mouth was dry. She hadn't eaten in hours. And yet none of that registered as real. All that registered was this. He had watched her walk away. And instead of chasing her, he had erased the path back. She thought she'd come home to a man waiting with disappointment. What she found was a void dressed as grace. A departure so clean, so calculating, it felt less like rejection and more like surgery. No bleeding. No mess. Just silence. The kind that means you're not welcome back. She didn't cry when she saw the bags. Didn't cry when the locks didn't work. Not even when Karen hung up like she was swatting a fly. But something shifted when her fingers brushed against a small, cream-colored envelope wedged between the handles of her largest suitcase, the one with the gold trim and her initials embossed like royalty. No postage. No name on the front. Just there, waiting. Like it had been waiting longer than she'd known. She slipped it out and stared at it for a full minute. Hands hesitant. She could already tell it was his handwriting, tight, even strokes. Measured. Practiced. The kind of handwriting you don't see in texts. The kind of handwriting you only use when you want the message to last. She unfolded the card. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence. "You said you needed space. I gave it to you. All of it. No insult. No bitterness. Not even a period at the end. Just distance. Clinical. Surgical. Final." Valerie's legs gave out before her denial did. She collapsed, back onto the suitcase like her bones had quietly slipped away. Her eyes scanned the words again, as if some secret meaning might appear. A code. A joke. A hint that he'd left a key under the mat, or a letter somewhere with a second chance. But there was none. Just that line. That one line. "You said you needed space. I gave it to you. All of it." And that's when she finally started to feel it. Not guilt. Not regret. Loss. The kind of loss that doesn't come from a single decision. It builds. Quietly. One forgotten birthday. One canceled dinner. One, "I'm tired tonight," after another. She used to think Harold's silence meant passivity. That he wasn't fighting for her. That he'd given up. She hadn't understood. He wasn't surrendering. He was recording. Every dismissive glance. Every dig dressed as a joke. Every moment she chose distraction over connection. He took notes. He remembered. And when it was time, he acted without rage. Without shouting. Without needing permission. She wanted space. He handed her a borderless, ownerless, permanent silence. And now she couldn't yell over it, couldn't cry through it. There was no audience left. Just her. A grown woman with a 5-carat ring that meant nothing now, sitting on monogrammed luggage outside a house she used to own, reading a line that closed a chapter she didn't realize had ended months ago. For the first time in years, Valerie didn't feel powerful, or beautiful, or right. She felt what Harold had probably felt every night as she scrolled her phone and tuned him out, forgotten. And the worst part? He didn't slam the door on her. He just left it open long enough for her to realize it had always been her walking out. And then quietly, finally, he shut it. "I'm just going to grab a quick shower," she said, her voice feather light, already halfway up the stairs. It was 11:43 p.m. Again. Same time every night for the past 3 weeks. Same routine. Jenna would brush past him with that airy tone, still wearing a full face of makeup, still clutching her phone like it was oxygen. She'd disappear into the bathroom for exactly 42 minutes, music playing loud enough to mask any sound, except not loud enough to mask the silence between them. Frank sat on the couch with the TV on mute. His beer was warm. His jaw ached from clenching. On the screen, a sitcom couple argued about burnt toast and laughed. He stared at them, hollow. That night, something inside him shifted, not snapped. Snapping was loud. This was quieter, colder, mechanical, like a gear finally locking into place. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer where she kept her old iPhone backups. Jenna had switched phones last month, switched brands, even. Said she needed a clean break from Apple. He didn't question it then. But tonight, it felt like a chess move. One she assumed he was too stupid to notice. Frank connected the old phone to his laptop. The device booted. Same wallpaper, a picture of their son, Liam, in his kindergarten cap and gown. Smiling, holding a diploma that looked too big for his little hands. The year was 2009. The phone opened. No passcode. And there it was. The ghost of a message thread. Deleted, yes, but not scrubbed. A few fragments survived in the iCloud cache. Frank scrolled with shaky fingers, eyes catching only pieces. Can't stop thinking about last night. You said you talked to him. He's getting suspicious? Then, he doesn't suspect a thing. He's too busy playing Dad of the Year, faced with years of joy. Frank didn't blink, didn't breathe. The timestamp, 3 months ago. The sender's name? Gone. Just a blank contact. No photo, no initials. But the number, he recognized it. His stomach turned. 540-813-7289. Uncle Tom. Frank didn't even need to check his contacts to confirm. He knew it like he knew his own social security number. Tom had been calling from that number since 2002. Back when Frank still lived in his parents' basement, trying to save up for a ring to propose to Jenna. He backed away from the desk, laptop still glowing. His mouth was dry. Not from anger. From something worse. Disbelief. Not rage. Not grief. Just that sickening, unreal feeling, like someone had taken his life and handed him a prop version. A cheaper duplicate. And he had been living inside it, like a fool. He heard the water shut off upstairs. Jenna's laugh echoed faintly. She was watching TikToks while toweling off. Like nothing had happened. Like her marriage wasn't made of duct tape and rot. Frank sat back down on the couch and muted the TV again. There were no theatrics. No shouting. He didn't storm upstairs. He didn't throw the laptop across the room. Instead, he picked up his phone and opened his notes app. Titled a new page. Phase 1. He wrote. Lawyer. Old house deed. PI referral from Caleb. Order DNA test for Liam. He stared at that last bullet. Then added one more. Smile. Always smile. Upstairs, Jenna hummed to herself. She still believed the illusion was intact. She still believed he was too busy playing Dad of the Year. She had no idea. And Frank? He didn't suspect a thing. Until now. Jenna walked into the kitchen wearing that robe she thought made her look cute and unbothered. White with little embroidered stars. The same one she wore when they hosted brunch for Tom's birthday last year. Frank remembered because she'd leaned over Tom to light the candles on the cake, giving him a view even Frank found inappropriate. Back then, he told himself he was overthinking it. Now he saw it for what it was, rehearsal. Morning, she said with a yawn, pouring herself coffee. Frank looked up from the paper with a soft smile. "Morning, sweetheart." She smiled back, wiped a bit of imagined sleep from her eye. Still in character. Still playing devoted wife, with all the skill of a high school theater understudy. She didn't notice he was left-handedly signing a retainer agreement tucked inside yesterday's newspaper. He'd met with the lawyer 2 days ago, lunch hour, 2 towns over. A no-nonsense woman named Deirdre Park. Sharp eyes, tighter smile. She didn't ask questions about emotions. She asked for facts, dates, assets, insurance, custody history, and whether Frank wanted the divorce to be explosive or surgical. He chose surgical. Quiet. Deadly. Jenna breezed past him with her mug. He noticed she'd started putting oat milk in her coffee lately. Tom was lactose intolerant. Frank used to joke that Tom could eat 3 steaks and drink a bottle of scotch, but would cry over a cheese cube. That joke doesn't land the same anymore. "Any plans today?" she asked casually, scrolling on her phone. He folded the paper neatly. "Just a few errands." "You. Massage at 11. Then Pilates." "Oh. And Tom said he might stop by. He's got a bottle of that Pinot you liked last Christmas." Frank nodded, taking a bite of his toast. "Tell him thanks. But I think I'm off wine for a while." She didn't even pause. He watched her leave the kitchen, phone still in hand, fingers tapping furiously. Probably texting Tom. Probably making another plan that ended in a Marriott parking lot. Frank slid open the junk drawer. Inside, next to old batteries and takeout menus, sat a prepaid flip phone, burner. Untraceable. The one Deirdre said to use for anything not meant to live on record. He thumbed open the contacts. Only one number saved: PI, Caleb's guy. Frank hadn't spoken to Caleb in 5 years. Not since the bachelor party incident. But Caleb knew people. Quiet people. People who could find things that weren't meant to be found. People who asked no questions. He texted. "Start surveillance." 2 subjects. Addresses and vehicle info incoming. He didn't sign it. The rest of the day, Frank played the part. Took Jenna's car to get detailed. Picked up groceries. Even stopped by the florist and ordered peonies, her favorite. No special occasion. Just because. That's what good husbands do, right? At dinner, he cooked. Let her pick the movie. Laughed at all the right parts. Held her foot under the blanket. When she leaned on his shoulder, he didn't flinch. But he did watch the reflection of her phone in the TV screen. She minimized a chat window the second she thought he wasn't looking. Later that night, when she fell asleep, scrolling, Frank watched her screen until the timeout kicked in. She used a new passcode now. 6 digits. He didn't need it. He'd already seen enough. The game wasn't in her phone anymore. It was in her face. The tiny shifts. The way she flinched when he asked about old memories. The way her voice rose an octave whenever she mentioned Tom's name, as if she were just so excited and couldn't help it. Frank lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling. He wondered if she remembered their wedding vows. He did. Every word. Every pause. He'd meant them. He turned his head and looked at her in the dark. Peaceful. Content. Dreaming, probably. Frank closed his eyes. He didn't need to scream. He didn't need to cry. He just needed to wait. A little longer. Let her get comfortable. Let her keep winning. She wouldn't even hear the blade until it was already in her chest. Metaphorically, of course. He smiled in the dark. 3 months from now, at their son's graduation party, she was going to open a gift bag that would end everything. And the wrapping paper would be the exact same floral pattern she used to wrap Tom's birthday present last year. He'd already ordered it. It was a Friday evening. Jenna was reheating lasagna, acting like this was just another casual night in suburbia. Their son Liam was at a sleepover, which Jenna conveniently forgot, until after she'd already set 2 extra plates. Frank noticed. Didn't comment. The doorbell rang at exactly 6:01 p.m. Tom, of course. Punctual as a plague. Frank opened the door to the same cologne he remembered from childhood. Some musky, overly confident scent that reeked of poker nights and lies. "Frankie," Tom bellowed, arms wide like he was greeting a nephew he hadn't just betrayed in the most biblical way possible. "Man, it's been too long." They'd had dinner together 6 days ago. Frank smiled like he meant it. "It really has." Tom handed over a bottle of red. Something expensive, naturally. He always overcompensated with labels and fake generosity. Thought we could open this tonight. Little pre-celebration for Liam. College boy and all. Sure, Frank said, stepping aside. Let me just find the corkscrew. I think Jenna keeps it in that second drawer now, right? That landed. Tom's smirk faltered just a second, because Jenna had reorganized the kitchen 3 months ago. Said she was decluttering. Said he didn't need to know where anything was anymore, because he never cooked anyway. But Frank remembered. Because Tom remembered. They laughed in the kitchen. Jenna poured wine. Tom told a story about his last fishing trip, caught a bass the size of a toddler, swear to God, and Jenna giggled like a schoolgirl, brushing hair behind her ear in that slow, unconscious flirt she'd always used when she wanted something. Frank sat across from them, swirling his glass, studying the two of them like a curator examining a stolen painting. Tom slapped the counter, barked out a laugh, reached over and rubbed Jenna's shoulder. She always had a thing for old men. Huh, Frankie? He teased. Jenna laughed, eyes darting toward Frank's face like she was checking for cracks. He gave her nothing. Tom turned to him, tipsy already. He always drank too fast, and said, "You're lucky to have her, you know. Woman like that? Rare." Frank raised his glass. "I know exactly how lucky I am," he said, his voice like marble, smooth, cold, impenetrable. Tom chuckled, oblivious. Damn right. They ate. They drank. Tom talked too much. Jenna pretended to listen, but her eyes kept darting to Frank, probably wondering when he'd start slipping, emotionally, mentally, anything. But he didn't. He chewed carefully, smiled when appropriate. He even offered Tom another pour. By dessert, Jenna had switched to water, Tom had not. Frank made sure to top off his glass before sliding him the tiramisu Jenna bought from the overpriced bakery downtown. "So, when's the graduation party?" Tom asked, mouth full. "You two doing something big?" Frank wiped his mouth. "Oh yeah, real big. Whole family. Neighbors. Friends. Figured it's a good time for some transitions." Transitions? Tom squinted. Jenna glanced up quickly, like a rabbit hearing a twig snap. Frank met her gaze. Let the silence stretch. Then smiled warmly. "You'll see." Tom leaned back, patting his belly. "Well, hell, just don't let me give the toast. I'll end up crying like a baby. Kid's practically grown. Makes you think, doesn't it? How fast it all goes." Frank nodded. "Yeah. Blink and 20 years disappear. Along with trust. Along with perspective." Neither of them responded to that. Tom scratched the back of his neck. Jenna cleared the table. Later, when Tom got up to leave, he gave Frank a firm pat on the back. The kind men give each other when they think they're equals. When they think betrayal hasn't hollowed out the foundation under their feet. "You take care of her," he said. Frank nodded once. Looked him in the eye. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I always do." Tom walked out, whistling some old tune from their childhood. Jenna closed the door too quickly. Frank turned and caught her watching him, just for a second, like she was trying to read his temperature. He gave her the same blank, pleasant smile he'd been perfecting for weeks, then walked past her to the garage, sat in his car, and pulled out the burner phone. Texted, "Subject 2 visits confirmed. Adding home surveillance next week." No suspicions. He didn't drive anywhere. He just sat, letting the engine hum like a lullaby while the weight of the evening settled. Tom still thought he was winning. So did she. Perfect. The investigator's name was Grayson. Retired Army intelligence, 30 years of quiet operations in places people only whispered about. Now he charged $150 an hour and didn't ask why someone wanted their wife and Uncle Tailed. He didn't flinch when Frank slid a manila envelope across the diner table containing 2 headshots, vehicle descriptions, and a cash deposit. He just tucked it into his coat pocket and asked, "You want timestamps or just highlights?" "I want everything," Frank replied. 3 days later, the first package arrived. A USB drive. No note. No pleasantries. Just raw data. Frank plugged it into the laptop in his garage, the one Jenna didn't know existed, nestled behind his tool cabinet. The screen flickered to life. A folder labeled Franklin Case _Alpha_02. Inside, subfolders named by date. Still shots. Timestamps. GPS pings. One folder labeled simply, "You're not crazy." He clicked that one first. The first photo was taken outside a hotel off Route 219. Jenna in sunglasses, stepping out of her car. Tom, already waiting by the side entrance, had pulled low like a bad actor in a crime movie. They didn't kiss, didn't touch, but they didn't have to. Body language told stories. In the next frame, Jenna was laughing, hand on Tom's chest. The next, both disappearing through the side door. Frank scrolled further. Another folder. Another date. Same hotel. But this time, the timestamp hit different. April 16th, 2005. Liam had been born April 13th. That photo? 3 days later. Jenna had still been bleeding. Still wearing hospital mesh underwear. Frank remembered her saying she was too exhausted to function, that her mom was staying over to help while he picked up the crib mattress they'd forgotten to order. She wasn't at home that day. Neither was her mother. Frank opened the attached transcript. Grayson had software that reconstructed fragments of text messages through sync backups Jenna had never wiped properly. The conversation was dated April 15th. Tom, he thinks the kid's his. You sure? Jenna, 100% don't worry. He's obsessed with me. He won't ever leave. Tom, we're sick. Jenna, that's what makes it fun. Now be at the side door tomorrow. 1 p.m. Frank stared at those words for what felt like hours. He thinks the kid's his. His ears rang. Not from rage. Not even grief. From the sheer density of betrayal, like his entire marriage had been wrapped in cellophane and slowly suffocating from the start. He looked at the calendar on the wall. It was April now. 2024. Liam was turning 19 next week. Which meant... Frank closed the laptop. He didn't scream. He didn't punch drywall. He just stood there, surrounded by tools, by sawdust, by rusted bolts and half-used caulk tubes, and felt like a man who'd just learned the house he built was sitting on a sinkhole. He pulled his burner phone out of the glove box and texted Grayson. Do you do paternity testing too? 3 minutes later. I know a guy. Discreet. You want on-site or lab pickup? On-site. Soon as possible. Frank walked back into the house like nothing had happened. Jenna was on the couch with a throw blanket and her AirPods in, watching something trashy and predictable. Hey babe, she said, not even looking up. Can you believe Liam's almost 19? Frank stood behind her, watching her shoulders move with the rhythm of her breathing. Yeah, he said softly. Time really flies. She smiled and hit play again. Frank walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, pulled out the wine Tom brought over last week, opened it, poured 2 glasses. He handed her one. To 19 years, he said. She clinked her glass against his. To the best thing we ever did. He nodded, then took a long sip. And in the back of his mind, one phrase looped over and over, burning itself into his spine. He thinks the kid's his. This wasn't an affair. This was a 20-year performance. And Frank? He was done being the audience. It started with the nosebleeds. Liam had them all the time growing up, out of nowhere, sudden gushers in the middle of the night, or while brushing his teeth, or once, during a parent-teacher conference. Jenna always said it ran in her family. Something about fragile nasal capillaries and dry heat. Frank believed her. Why wouldn't he? His wife gave him a reason, and he trusted it. Trusted her. But last week, Liam had another one, right before school. His white t-shirt soaked through in the front, looking like a Halloween prank gone wrong. Frank rushed upstairs, half asleep, holding tissues and barking for towels. Jenna was already gone, Pilates again. Liam just laughed it off like usual, one hand pinching his nose, the other tapping through Spotify like it was nothing. And that's when Frank noticed it. Not the blood, not the grin, the face, the profile, the sharp slope of Liam's nose, his narrow jaw, the way his left eyebrow arched, not like Frank's, not like Jenna's either. And suddenly, all Frank could see was Tom. He sat down on the closed toilet lid while Liam leaned over the sink, spitting red into the bowl. You ever had your blood tested? Frank asked, voice casual. Liam looked back, blinking. Like for what? Just allergies. Traits. Stuff you might need to know before college. Liam shrugged. Mom took me once, when I was little. I think she said I had type AB. Frank felt a pin drop inside his chest. He was O negative. Jenna was A. You don't have to be a geneticist to know how blood types work. Frank didn't say another word. just helped his son clean up, ruffled his hair, and told him to grab breakfast. That night, after everyone was asleep, Frank pulled up 23andMe's website, then closed it. Too obvious. Too commercial. He needed something cleaner. Quiet. Untraceable. He found a clinic in Baltimore, discreet mail-in testing. Paternity kits shipped in unmarked boxes. Results available via private portal. No phone calls. No paper trail. He ordered the kit. Paid extra for rush delivery. 2 days later, it arrived in a plain manila envelope marked Bejo sample enclosed. Frank tucked it under his flannel and carried it into the garage. The hardest part wasn't collecting his own saliva. It wasn't even getting Liam's. It was easy. During a father-son night watching a Lakers game, Frank handed him a glass of water, waited for him to set it down, then slipped the rim into a sealed bag using tweezers. It was ridiculous how easy deception became once you'd lived inside a lie for 20 years. He mailed the samples and waited. 7 days. He tried to keep busy. Jenna was in her usual manic overdrive, planning graduation, booking overpriced venues, arguing with caterers, obsessing over color palettes like any of it mattered. Tom stopped by once with a bag of charcoal and a joke about barbecuing at the party. Frank shook his hand and pictured wrapping it in a vice. The email came in on a Thursday. Subject: your results are ready. Frank stared at it for 30 minutes. Then he walked into the garage, locked the door, sat at the workbench, and clicked. The screen loaded. A PDF file. He opened it. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words blurred. He blinked. Scrolled again. Conclusion: Mr. Franklin L. Pierce is not the biological father. Frank sat motionless, not even breathing, just reading and rereading, hoping some alternate version of the result would appear if he stared long enough. But the words didn't change. He wasn't Liam's father. 19 years of bedtime stories. Soccer games. First bike ride. Emergency room visits. Broken arms. A tattoo he lied about. That stupid raccoon Liam tried to keep as a pet for 3 days. Not his. Not biologically. And somehow, that single phrase, probability of paternity, 0.00%, hit harder than the cheating, the betrayal, the lies. It reached into his ribs and pulled something loose. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. That would have given the moment too much dignity. Instead, he stood, picked up a hammer, and calmly crushed the phone he used to track Jenna. Smashed it into a quiet pile of plastic and glass. Then, without a word, he printed the PDF, folded it twice, slid it into a black envelope, labeled it with gold ink. For Jenna, opened privately. She'd open it in front of 50 people. And in that moment, he would finally get what he wanted. Not revenge. Clarity. Frank always hated legal paperwork. The stiff chairs, the fluorescent lights, the way the pins always ran out halfway through the signature line. But that Tuesday afternoon, seated across from a probate attorney named Harold Kimball in a dusty little office above a vape shop, Frank signed his name with surgical precision. "Are you sure you want the trust to be irrevocable?" Kimball asked, pushing his glasses up his nose. "That means no changes. No undoing." Frank nodded without hesitation. "I'm sure." Kimball tapped the deed with a bony finger. "And the house goes entirely into the trust. Sole beneficiary, Liam Pierce, effective immediately upon your passing or incapacity. Not jointly held. Not transferable to a spouse. No survivorship rights." "Correct." Frank leaned back, hands folded. The house he built with Jenna, the one she insisted have the wraparound porch and double ovens for entertaining, would never be hers again. Not even through inheritance. Not after what she did. He'd made sure of it. Every nail, every square foot, now belonged to his son. Not their son. His son. In the only way that mattered now. Kimball slid over a second folder. "And these are the updated will documents. You've removed your wife as power of attorney, health proxy, and beneficiary." "I have. No spousal rights remain. If she contests anything, she'll get nothing under the no contest clause." "Good." "Final piece," Kimball said, opening a third folder, the divorce packet. "I understand your attorney already handled filing." Frank nodded. "Deirdre Park. She filed everything last month. I signed and notarized. Jenna will be served, eventually." Kimball looked confused. Eventually, Frank gave a small, unreadable smile. Timing matters. Kimball blinked. Legally speaking, she'll still have rights until she's served. Are you comfortable with that delay? 6 months of comfort, Frank said, in exchange for 1 perfect hour. The attorney stared for a moment, then scribbled something in his notes. He didn't ask further. Frank reviewed the last page. All the names, all the transfers, the conditional statements, the death clauses, it was like building a machine. A cold, precise machine. One designed to dismantle everything Jenna thought she owned, everything she thought she'd secured in her little backstabbing fantasy. It was all slipping away from her quietly, legally, perfectly. He signed the last page. The notary stamped it. A subtle click, like a trigger being set. Kimball gathered the documents into 3 folders. I'll file this first thing in the morning. The trust paperwork will be certified by Friday. You'll receive confirmation via encrypted email. Anything else I can assist you with? Frank stood up slowly, smoothing out his coat. Do you know any custom printers? Someone discreet. For specialty stationery. Gift bags, maybe. The attorney raised an eyebrow. Graduation coming up? Frank nodded once. Big party. I want the packaging to look sincere. That night, Jenna was on a Zoom call in the den. Something about volunteers for the senior picnic. Frank walked past her, holding a glass of whiskey and humming to himself. She waved him off like background noise, laughing into the screen, telling someone named Trish that Liam was the best thing Tom and I ever raised, then quickly correcting herself, Frank and I. He paused in the hallway just long enough for the words to burn, then walked into the study, opened his laptop, and clicked order on a floral gift bag design with a gold satin ribbon. Quantity, 1. Inside, the machine had already begun to hum. The trust, the deed, the paternity report, the divorce papers, signed and sealed. A time bomb of facts and signatures, all waiting in perfect silence for the cue to detonate. Frank took a sip of whiskey and stared out the window. 6 months. He could smile that long. Don't you miss how it used to be? Jenna asked one morning, barefoot in the kitchen, wearing his old flannel shirt like it meant something. Frank was spreading cream cheese on a bagel, slow and methodical. You used to kiss me on the neck when I made coffee, she added, hip brushing his side as she reached past him for a mug. Frank didn't flinch. Didn't even look at her. I guess I forgot, he said, tone dry as toast. She giggled, forced and fluttery. Yeah, you forget a lot lately. She walked away with a sway that screamed, look at me, sat on the stool by the island, and started scrolling through her phone, probably sending another innocent heart emoji to Tom. Frank watched her reflection in the chrome toaster. She was smirking, twirling her hair like she was 22 again and seducing someone who didn't know better. She thought she was still in control. That same day, Frank overheard her on the phone with her friend Jill, out by the patio. She didn't see him standing just behind the screen door. I mean, he's not mean. He's just checked out. We barely even talk. I feel like I live with my accountant, not my husband. Pause. Giggle. No, I'm serious. It's like he's cold, you know? Like, maybe he knows something, but I doubt it. He can barely find the laundry detergent. Frank sipped his coffee, not moving. Jenna went on. I swear, if I didn't flirt with him once in a while, he'd probably forget I was even here. Frank turned and walked inside, still sipping. Smiled to himself. He didn't forget she was here. He cataloged her every move, every misplaced word, every shift in tone. He saw the pattern now. It was the same as always, test the boundaries, then act wounded when she tripped the wire. Later that night, she came into the living room wearing makeup she hadn't worn in years. Lipstick too bold for a quiet night in. Frank was flipping through channels, not really watching. You ever think about going away? She asked suddenly. Just the 2 of us? Frank turned the volume down 1 notch. Like a vacation? He asked. Sure. Or maybe just a reset. We could stay somewhere small, just talk. I miss talking. Frank didn't say anything for a moment. Where would we go? He asked. Jenna smiled like he'd fallen for it. I don't know. Maybe a cabin in the mountains. No phones. Just us. Like it used to be. Frank nodded. That sounds peaceful. Jenna leaned down, kissed his temple, and whispered, it's not too late, you know. Then she walked away. She really believed it. Believed he was confused. Sad. Desperate to reconnect. She thought she still had him on the leash. And maybe, in her mind, she did. Maybe that was why she wore his shirts. Maybe that was why she kept making small gestures to make herself feel merciful. Like she hadn't shattered something already. Frank stood up, walked to the office, opened the drawer with the file folders, pulled out a black envelope. This one was labeled, to be opened if she plays innocent. Inside, he tucked a printed screenshot from one of Grayson's surveillance stills. Jenna kissing Tom in the parking lot behind a pharmacy. Not romantic. Raw. Familiar. Next to it, he slid a copy of the paternity results. Then, at the bottom, he added a handwritten note. You said he looked like your grandfather. Turns out, he looks just like his great-uncle. He sealed it, placed it in the drawer beneath the first envelope, the one labeled for the graduation party. Frank leaned back in the chair and exhaled slowly. She was getting bolder now. More reckless. Flirting. Gaslighting. Turning their friends into sympathizers before he ever said a word. Perfect. She was laying her own trap without knowing she was stepping into his. Let her strut. Let her gossip. Let her soak in the illusion of winning. Because in 4 weeks, she'd open a floral gift bag at her son's graduation party and realize everything she thought she had was already gone. And every smug little word she whispered into a wine glass would come back to echo in a room full of family. Frank smiled. She was right about one thing. It was too late. Frank started planning the graduation party like a man designing a stage play, because, in many ways, that's exactly what it was. Except this time, he wasn't the actor. He was the director, the audience, and the executioner. The invitations went out first, handwritten, formal, embossed in navy and silver, Liam's school colors. He used a calligraphy service Jenna didn't even know existed, because handwritten feels more intimate, she used to say. Fine. Let it be intimate. Let every aunt, cousin, neighbor, and judgmental in-law be there. Let them all clap when the toasts begin. Jenna feigned interest for the first 5 minutes, then slipped back into her bubble, where Tom's texts got more attention than caterers, and Frank's questions about seating arrangements were answered with distracted nods and fake smiles. I just think you're better at this stuff, she said, flipping through Instagram on the patio one afternoon. Besides, I'm swamped with Liam's senior photos. She hadn't booked them. Frank had. She also hadn't chosen the menu. He had 3 kinds of sliders, 2 stations, a lemonade bar, ice cream cart for the kids. He didn't skimp. Because this wasn't just a party. It was a countdown. In the evenings, Frank walked the backyard with a tape measure, marking off distances for tables, lighting, and the sound system. He consulted with the DJ. No speeches longer than 3 minutes unless approved. 1 microphone, wireless. Backup available in case of technical difficulties. Everything had to run smooth. Jenna didn't notice. Not the details, not the pacing, not even the suspicious lack of questions about budget. She was too busy whispering behind partially closed doors, brushing crumbs off Tom's shirt when she thought no one was watching, and laughing a little too hard when he made jokes that weren't that funny. Frank watched her reflection in the patio door one evening, saw her lean into Tom as they sipped wine, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass like a nervous tell. She thought she was subtle. She thought he was stupid. Let her. Inside the garage, Frank opened a new tab on his laptop and typed, custom gift packaging. Single order. Elegant design. He settled on one vendor out of Seattle. Specialized in one-offs. High-end presentation. The kind of packaging you'd expect for a diamond bracelet or a bombshell revelation. Frank selected a soft floral pattern. Gold foil embossing. A single satin ribbon looped through the handle. Inside, there would be 3 items. 3. 1 to kill the illusion. 1 to shift the power. And 1 to prove it was already over. He finalized the order. Shipping address, his office, not the house. Estimated delivery, 3 days before the party. Perfect. He closed the laptop just as Jenna peeked into the garage. You're in here a lot lately, she said playfully. Planning my surprise too? Frank turned, gave her a slow grin. Something like that. She laughed, leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, toe tapping lightly. Just don't forget to make a toast. Liam will remember it forever. Frank tilted his head. Oh, I've got something special planned. She winked, then wandered off, back to her wine, back to her whispers, back to her delusion. Frank looked at the stack of RSVP cards on the counter. 57 confirmed guests. Maybe 60 by the time the day arrived. People who'd seen their marriage from the outside and called it solid, strong, classic. Let them all watch. Let them witness the truth. The gift bag would be placed beneath the table at the far end of the lawn, right next to the microphone stand. The trap didn't need springs or spikes. It just needed timing. And Frank? Frank had nothing but time. By 2:30 p.m., the backyard was full. The sun hung politely behind a layer of soft clouds, casting that cinematic light photographers dream about. String lights stretched from tree to tree. The sound of light jazz floated under the chatter of distant cousins reuniting over mini quiches and lemonade. Someone's toddler was chasing a balloon shaped like a graduation cap. Liam stood near the photo board Frank had built, grinning as people pointed at his baby pictures, the soccer trophies, the kindergarten Halloween costume where he was a ghost with crooked eyes. And in the middle of it all, Jenna shined. She wore a cream summer dress, gold earrings, and a charm bracelet that Tom had given her last Christmas, though she claimed it was from a boutique downtown. Her hair curled soft and effortless, her smile flawless. To anyone else, she looked like the proud wife of the perfect husband throwing the perfect party for their perfect son. Frank watched her hug Aunt Teresa, the one who once warned him not to rush into marriage. He shook hands with Jenna's old boss, who called her brilliant and a little bit of a pistol. He handed beers to neighbors, greeted Liam's teachers, even helped the DJ find the outlet behind the flower bed. Tom arrived 20 minutes late, of course. Always the man who liked to be noticed walking in. He wore a navy polo, aviators, and that self-satisfied grin he probably practiced in the mirror. "Frankie," he bellowed, arms open, as if they hadn't seen each other in days instead of hours. "Look at this spread, huh? You throw one hell of a party." Frank clasped his hand, firm and easy. "Thanks for coming, Uncle Tom. Wouldn't be the same without you." Jenna was watching them, eyes glinting, probably proud of how civil they all were. How close-knit. She floated over with 2 champagne flutes, handed one to Tom, kissed Frank on the cheek in that practiced, hostessy way. He didn't flinch, just smiled and said, "You look great, babe. Really put together today." She lit up. "Well, I do love a party." Clearly, she didn't catch the tone. Didn't want to. She was too busy performing. Frank drifted through the crowd like a politician, shaking hands, answering questions, nodding politely. But every few minutes, his eyes flicked back to one spot, the white gift table under the pergola, next to the guest book and the box labeled Cards for Liam. Amidst all the wrapped boxes and gift bags, tucked in between 2 glossy department store packages, sat the one Jenna hadn't noticed. Soft floral pattern. Satin gold ribbon. Small, elegant. And inside it, a black envelope. Unmarked. Sealed. Waiting. No one paid it any attention. Not yet. Jenna was in her element now, retelling stories about Liam's first day of kindergarten, dramatizing how he used to cry if she left him too long in the grocery store aisle. She reenacted it, hand on her chest, wide-eyed. He'd yell, "Mommy, where are you?" like I abandoned him forever. Everyone laughed. Frank stood by the drink station, pouring himself a bourbon. He caught her eye for just a moment. She winked at him. "See? We're pulling it off." He lifted his glass slightly in response. "We sure are." Evening crept in like a whisper. The DJ switched from soft jazz to acoustic pop. Guests gathered around the patio. Someone tapped a wine glass with a fork and shouted, "Speech." "Dad's speech." Jenna beamed. She turned to Frank, squeezing his arm. "This is it," she whispered. "Make it good." He looked at her for a long moment. Not angry. Not even cold. Just done. Then he kissed her on the forehead. "I've got it from here." He stepped up to the mic, paper in hand, heart steady. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows of the pergola, sat the gift bag with the black envelope. Untouched. Unopened. For now. Frank cleared his throat. Not because he was nervous. Those nerves had burned off weeks ago. What replaced them wasn't confidence. It was precision. Like the moment before a surgeon makes the first incision. Or the silence before a sniper exhales. "Thank you all for coming," he began, voice steady, carrying easily across the backyard. Jenna, standing just a few feet away, smiled with practiced grace, hand resting gently on Liam's shoulder. The picture of supportive motherhood. A camera flash caught her mid-laugh as someone whispered, "She looks amazing for her age." Frank raised his glass toward Liam, who stood at the edge of the pergola with his hands awkwardly folded, still trying to decide if this party was cool or corny. "To my son," Frank said, "you made me proud, every day, even when you didn't know it. Even when I didn't say it. You're the best part of my life." The crowd clapped. A couple of guests whistled. Someone shouted, "Yeah, Liam," and he gave a mock bow. Jenna turned to Frank with that look, one she used to give him when she was genuinely moved, before the rot set in. She reached forward, fingertips brushing his wrist. "You gonna kiss me or just soak in the applause?" she whispered, tilting her head. Frank smiled, then reached behind the podium and pulled out the floral-patterned gift bag with the gold satin ribbon. The backyard shifted. Not dramatically, just barely. A subtle stillness. A glitch in the rhythm of celebration. Like a piano note held a beat too long. "This," Frank said, holding out the bag, "is for you." Jenna blinked. People around them chuckled, thinking it was a sweet surprise. Maybe jewelry. Maybe a keepsake from the early days. The kind of romantic curveball husbands threw to win back time lost to routine. She took it slowly, smile faltering just slightly. "What is it?" she asked, already peeking into the bag. Frank tilted his head, tone low but audible. "Something just for you." Jenna reached inside. The first thing she pulled out was a white sheet of paper, folded crisply in thirds. Her eyes scanned it for half a second before recognition washed over her like ice water. The DNA test report. Somewhere behind her, a fork dropped onto a plate. The second item, a formal-looking document, notarized and stamped, slid into her hand like a death notice. The house deed transfer. Jenna's hands trembled now, her mouth parting just slightly. And then the third, a thick manila envelope, sealed tight, bearing her own signature from months ago. Divorce papers. Dated 6 months ago. Filed. Finalized. She froze. Every movement in the backyard stopped with her. Conversation died like a snuffed flame. You could hear the wind rustling through the string lights. Could hear someone's toddler whining faintly by the lemonade table. Jenna's lips moved, trying to form words that wouldn't come. Frank stepped closer. Not aggressive. Not smug. Just inevitable. "I moved on a long time ago," he said softly. "I just waited for today to tell you." She stared at him, throat visibly tightening. Aunt Teresa covered her mouth. Tom, from halfway across the yard, froze with his drink halfway to his lips. The black envelope was still inside the bag. She hadn't even touched it yet, and she didn't dare. Frank turned back to the guests, lifted his glass again. "To Liam," he said. "To family. And to truth." The crowd didn't know whether to clap, so they didn't. They just watched, as Jenna stood there, clutching the bag like it was a bomb with a ticking timer. And Frank, he smiled. Not out of cruelty, out of completion. Jenna stared down into the bag like it had teeth. Her fingers trembled as she reached in again, slowly unfolding the first sheet of paper. She scanned it once, eyes darting, confused, then again, slower. And then she stopped breathing. The DNA report wasn't dramatic. No bold font. No screaming headline. Just lines. Simple, clinical. Probability of paternity, 0%. Her hand shook so hard the paper fluttered. A breeze caught the edge and nearly yanked it from her grip. She clenched it tighter, like maybe if she just held it hard enough, it wouldn't be real. Frank didn't move. He just watched. Across the yard, Liam, still oblivious, laughed with his friends by the ice cream cart. Someone snapped a picture. A dog barked down the street. But in their immediate circle, around the gift table, silence had dropped like a guillotine. Jenna looked up at Frank, her mouth barely forming a word. "WH, what is this?" she whispered, voice dry. Frank didn't answer. She reached in again, pulled out the second item, a manila sheet this time. Legal font. Stamped. Her name, typed neatly at the top. She flipped the page. It was the deed. The house was no longer in their names. No longer in her name. A living trust. Sole beneficiary, Liam Pierce. Not Jenna. Not joint tenant. Not even contingent. Frank had cut her out of the foundation of their life like mold and drywall. Her knees bent slightly. Not enough to fall, just enough to show her body was finally catching up to the betrayal her mind had been too arrogant to imagine. And still, there was more. She reached in one final time, pulling out the sealed divorce packet. Her signature already there. Date: 6 months ago. Stamped. Filed. Finalized. No room to fight. No surprise to weaponize. Just a quiet, surgical betrayal that had already carved her out of everything she thought she owned. She looked up, pale now, makeup settling into the cracks around her eyes. Frank stepped a little closer, just enough for her to hear him when he spoke. "I moved on a long time ago," he said, voice calm. "Not cruel. Not angry. Just done. I just waited for today to tell you." Jenna opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Around them, the crowd tried to pretend they weren't watching. Tried and failed. Tom was frozen by the drink table, glass still clutched in his hand, knuckles white. Jenna finally looked his way, and that's when she saw it. The black envelope still inside the bag. She reached for it, hesitant, almost afraid. Slipped it out, turned it in her hands, then unfolded the contents. A surveillance still. Her. Tom. In the parking lot behind the pharmacy. Lips locked. Hand placement not up for interpretation. Then, the paternity report. Again. Then Frank's note, scrawled in his precise block letters. "You said he looked like your grandfather. Turns out, he looks just like his great uncle." Jenna dropped the envelope. It landed face up on the grass, silent as a slap. And for the first time, Jenna, queen of control, mistress of misdirection, had nothing to say. Nothing to explain. No script. No spin. She just stood there, publicly gutted. Frank didn't smirk. Didn't gloat. He simply turned to Liam, still laughing by the cooler, and called out, "Hey, champ, you got a second?" Liam turned, surprised. "Yeah." Frank nodded toward the driveway. "Let's go for a ride. Just you and me." Jenna took a step forward, one hand raised as if to speak, but the moment swallowed her. She was a ghost at her own party. And Frank? He walked away without ever looking back. Tom took one shaky step forward. He had that forced, crooked smile he wore when he thought charm might still get him out of something. The one he used on waitresses, cops, and women who should have known better. He opened his mouth like he was about to say, "Let's talk about this, Frankie." Or maybe, "You're blowing this out of proportion." But Frank didn't let him. He turned just slightly, just enough to cut the air, and said, low and clear, "Sit down. You've done enough." The words landed like a hammer in a glass room. Tom's mouth closed. His hand dropped. His entire body seemed to shrink as he turned back toward the cooler and did as he was told. Jenna stood in the center of it all, arms hanging at her sides, one hand still clinging to the shredded floral bag like it could somehow anchor her to a reality that no longer existed. Her dress now seemed too bright, her gold bracelet suddenly absurd. A performance costume worn long after the show was over. The silence around her wasn't polite anymore. It was complete. Neighbors looked away. Cousins exchanged quick, horrified glances. Her friend Jill, the one she used to vent to about Frank being boring and cold, quietly set her drink down and moved toward the back gate. Even Liam's best friend paused mid-bite of a hot dog, watching like he'd stumbled into a courtroom drama with no commercial breaks. Frank didn't linger. He just turned toward Liam, who was now fully clued in that something huge had just happened. "Grab your keys," Frank said softly. "I need some air. Let's take that drive." Liam hesitated. "Wait, Dad, what's—" Frank placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Steady. Grounded. I'll tell you everything," he said. "Just not here." Jenna finally took a single step forward, lips parted as if to speak, but no sound came. Frank didn't even glance at her. She was nothing more than background noise now. A failed plotline in a story he'd already rewritten. He and Liam walked down the stone path, past the folding chairs, past the half-eaten charcuterie boards and untouched cupcakes with Liam's name piped in blue. They passed the pergola, where the gift table still sat like an altar, except now the illusion had been sacrificed right on it. When they reached the car, Liam climbed into the passenger seat and closed the door slowly. Frank started the engine. The graduation banner fluttered in the rearview mirror as he pulled away. He didn't look back once. Not at the yard. Not at the house. Not at her. Back there, Jenna was still standing with the bag in her hand, torn tissue paper clinging to her heel like a final insult. Tom sat stiffly in a patio chair, staring at the grass. No one said anything to either of them. Because what was there to say? Frank didn't shout, didn't rage, didn't curse. He just ended it. Perfectly. Quietly. Surgically. And for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't waiting for her to change. He was done. Free. And as the car rounded the corner and disappeared down the hill, Jenna stood alone in the center of her crumbling empire, surrounded by silence, stares, and all the choices she thought she'd never have to answer for. Now, they were all she had left. He was wiping barbecue sauce off Tyler's chin when the boy was 5. Sat through 12 school concerts, each more tone-deaf than the last. Learned the difference between Minecraft and Fortnite just to keep up. He was there when Tyler's appendix decided to explode on a Tuesday night, and when a classmate shattered his confidence by calling his science project cute. Gerald was the emergency contact. The shoulder, the ride, the guy behind the camera and the wallet and the whole damn curtain. For 15 years, he was dad. So when Tyler looked across the dinner table that evening, mid-bite, chewing like nothing monumental was coming, and said, "I'm inviting my real dad to my graduation," Gerald thought he misheard. Tyler kept going, unfazed. "You can just come as a guest, or whatever." Gerald blinked. The air in the room turned syrup thick. Denise froze, fork hovering between plate and mouth. Her eyes darted between them, silently screaming, "Please don't." He put his knife down, wiped his hands on the napkin. "You're serious?" Tyler shrugged. "He's my real father. I mean, biologically. Just seems right." A heartbeat passed. Then another. Gerald smiled, or something close to it. "Got it." No plate thrown. No voice raised. Just that quiet, "Got it," slicing cleaner than any argument would have. And if you've made it this far, hey, I know 98% of you are watching without hitting that subscribe button. We're trying to hit our first 10,000 subs, ever. It means the world to our little team and keeps the stories coming hotter than Tyler's betrayal. So if you want to help us keep roasting like this, you know what to do. Thanks. Back at the table, Denise was still staring. She opened her mouth once, then shut it. She reached for his hand under the table, but he was already standing, collecting plates like it was just another Tuesday. Tyler didn't notice. He was too busy checking his phone, probably waiting for a text from real dad. In the garage later, Gerald stood by the old fridge, the one with Tyler's preschool finger paintings still magnet-pinned under fading best dad badges. He stared at them longer than he meant to. One drawing, a crude stick figure family, had Gerald in the middle, comically tall, with Super Dad written in crayon over his head. He peeled it down gently, folded it twice, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He didn't sleep that night. Not from heartbreak, but from recalibration. Something had shifted. Not broken, not snapped, just shifted. Like tectonic plates moving silently underfoot, rearranging the landscape with no warning. In the hallway, Denise whispered, "He doesn't mean it." Gerald looked at her, jaw tight. "Doesn't matter." He said it. Denise started to cry, but he didn't reach for her. Instead, he turned to the small safe at the back of the closet. The one he hadn't opened since Tyler turned 18. As the click of the lock echoed into the silence, so did something else, finality. The hinges creaked like they hadn't been touched in years, which they hadn't. Gerald sat on the floor of the walk-in closet, cross-legged in sweatpants, surrounded by shoeboxes full of receipts, winter boots no one wore, and a decade's worth of dust. The safe wasn't big. It was a nondescript gray block tucked behind Denise's luggage when he bought the same month he legally became Tyler's father. His fingers hesitated over the combination lock. He remembered it by muscle memory more than thought. 0503, Tyler's birthday. Fitting. Ironic. Almost theatrical. Click. The door swung open. First came the paperwork. The adoption certificate with his signature next to Denise's, both lines a little shaky from the courtroom nerves that day. Tyler had been 3. He barely understood what it meant. But Gerald remembered how tightly the boy had clung to his neck that afternoon, too young to articulate why the judge had called him dad, but somehow understanding that everything was about to feel more permanent. Next, the bank ledgers. Years of tuition payments. Pediatric bills. Sports fees. The orthodontist from hell. All paid without a second thought. Gerald flipped through them slowly, each one a quiet reminder of sacrifice that Tyler never asked for, but never questioned, either. That was the job. You give. You give quietly. Then the letter. God, the letter. It was dated 6 years ago. Tyler had just turned 12, started to ask those fidgety preteen questions about his real dad. Gerald had sat down that night to write him something, anything, that would prepare him for the day he might go looking. He never gave it to him. Denise had convinced him to wait. Let him be a kid, she said. Don't plant seeds he's not ready to grow. But now? That letter was the root. He unfolded it, read the first few lines. His own handwriting was oddly neat for once. You're going to hear stories, and some of them will sound better than the truth. But remember, I stayed. Gerald exhaled slowly and folded it back up. Slid it into the envelope first, like a base layer of insulation. Then he turned to the file cabinet in the garage, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the newest document, a copy of the revised trust. Tyler's name was still on the header, still listed as a potential heir. Potential. Because 2 days ago, Gerald had met with his attorney and added a clause in the event of relinquishment of filial relationship. He didn't finish reading it. He knew what it said. He added that page last, tucked behind everything else like a trapdoor at the end of a tunnel. The envelope was thick now. He ran his thumb along its edge, then sealed it with tape. Wrote nothing on the front. No name. No title. Just left it blank, like a silence waiting to be broken. Gerald didn't cry. He hadn't cried in years, not even when his father died. But he sat there a long time, staring at that envelope like it was a live grenade. Outside, the porch light buzzed, flickering from a dying bulb he'd been meaning to change. A small thing. Like everything else. Like respect. Like loyalty. The house was quiet. Denise had fallen asleep hours ago, curled on her side of the bed like nothing tectonic had just cracked between walls they built together. Gerald stayed on the floor. He didn't need sleep. He needed clarity. The next morning, he placed the envelope into the inner lining of his suit jacket. Not the outer pocket. That was for show. This one was for weight. For presence. For permanence. Whatever Tyler thought he knew about fathers was about to change. Steve rolled up in a leased black Dodge Charger with an exhaust louder than his intentions. The car idled outside the house for a full minute before he even got out, like it needed to announce him first. When the door finally opened, out stepped a man 15 years late with a cocky grin and a cheap leather jacket creased from years of hangers, not wear. Gerald watched from the garage, arms crossed. Tyler stood at the front door, already bounding down the steps like a kid meeting Santa Claus. He hadn't moved that fast since his first varsity game. Steve, Tyler said, all teeth and energy. Look at you. Steve barked, gripping Tyler in a hug, one arm too short and one pat too hard. Man, you're taller than I expected. Damn near look like me. Gerald squinted at that line. Denise stepped out onto the porch behind them, a polite smile frozen on her lips like someone trying to greet a rattlesnake without showing fear. Hi, Steve, she said carefully. Hey there, D. He winked. Like it was still 2002 and she hadn't raised a teenager without him. Steve sniffed the air dramatically. Man, I miss this place. Same mailbox. He thumped it like it was a doghouse. Gerald didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched, silent, steady. Inside, Steve spun tales about the good old days, like he'd lived through them instead of skipped them entirely. Claimed he was lining up some contracts in Florida. Talked about the time he almost toured with some band no one had heard of. Even pulled out his phone to show a photo of a boat he allegedly owned. Gerald recognized the stock image. Saw it on a Facebook ad once for a vacation sweepstakes. Over dinner, which Steve invited himself to, he pitched the idea of taking Tyler out after graduation. We'll hit the bars, toast to your future, you know? Celebrate like real men. Gerald didn't blink. Didn't twitch. Just quietly cut his steak and chewed. That cool with you, G-Man? Steve added, flashing that salesman smile. Denise looked down at her plate. Gerald set his knife down with deliberate calm. Sure. Why not? It's his night. Tyler, beaming, lifted his glass of soda like it was champagne. It's gonna be epic. The word epic hung in the air like smoke from a match. That night, Gerald didn't go home right away. He drove out to the edge of town, took the long way past the old mill, past the diner where he once waited 3 hours when Denise went into labor, past the school where Tyler learned to tie his shoes. Then he pulled into a gravel lot beside the lake. The rental office had one cabin left, far enough from town, close enough to feel like exile. One queen bed, a kitchenette, and silence. Just how Gerald liked it. He booked it one way. No checkout date. No plan. As he signed the paperwork, the receptionist glanced up. Vacation? Gerald smiled faintly. Something like that. Back at the house, Steve had already fallen asleep on the couch, shoes on, belt unbuckled, snoring through his mouth. Tyler scrolled through his phone beside him, laughing at something they'd posted on Instagram. Denise sat in the kitchen, staring into a glass of wine, her expression unreadable. Gerald didn't go inside. He stood in the driveway, watching the scene through the window. Then he turned, got in his car, and drove to the cabin. Because sometimes, silence wasn't surrender, it was the calm before the calculation. It started with a perfectly civil email from the school. Please confirm your family's preferred seating arrangements for the graduation stage and reception. Denise read it out loud over breakfast, her voice neutral, carefully void of emotion, like she was defusing a bomb. Tyler didn't even pause his spoon. Yeah, I already told them. Steve's gonna sit beside me on stage. The cereal crackled in Gerald's mouth. Denise set the phone down a little too fast. You, what? Tyler looked up, casual. Yeah, I mean, he's my real dad, right? Makes sense. The word real again, slithering into the room like a recurring curse. Denise's face tightened. Tyler, your father, Gerald, raised you. Tyler cut her off. I know, Mom, but it's just symbolic. I want Steve there. He missed everything else, so this one, it's important. Gerald put his fork down, wiped his mouth, took a sip of coffee that had long gone cold. I'll stay in the back, he said flatly. Denise turned to him, panic in her eyes. Gerald, please. This isn't right. Don't let it go like this. Don't let him do this. He stood, took his mug to the sink. I won't make a scene, he said without turning around. I'll just be there. Tyler, still chewing, didn't look up. Later that night, Denise found him in the garage. He was at the workbench, wiping down a wrench that hadn't been used in months. The envelope sat beside him, thick now, its edges slightly curled from being handled. You're really going to just sit in the back like some guest? He didn't look at her. That's what I am now. You're his father. He turned then, looked at her with something that wasn't anger, but wasn't softness either. No, I was. She flinched. Gerald picked up the envelope, ran his thumb along the seal, then pressed it closed with finality. Slowly, deliberately, he slid it into the inside pocket of his blazer, the one he only wore for weddings and funerals. He closed the button over it. Denise stepped closer. What's in it? He looked at her, finally. Everything he never asked about. Silence stretched between them like a drawbridge slowly lifting. You're not going to fight for this? She whispered. He almost laughed, almost. I already did. Every single day for 15 years. The next morning, Tyler left early for rehearsal. Steve didn't show. Again, Gerald stood at the closet mirror, adjusting his collar, tucked a pin into his breast pocket, checked his jacket for the envelope still there. He looked at his reflection, at the lines on his face that weren't there when he first taught a 3-year-old how to brush his teeth. He didn't see a broken man. He saw a prepared one. Outside, the lawn was freshly cut. The banner in the driveway read, "Congratulations, Tyler," in big, cheerful letters. Inside, a storm had already passed. And Gerald? He wasn't trying to stop the flood anymore. He was the dam quietly cracking. The rehearsal dinner was held at a chain steakhouse on the edge of town, chosen by Denise for its neutral territory and limited emotional landmines. It was supposed to be small, just the family, Tyler's closest friends, a few teachers, and the principal who had politely agreed to make a toast. The table was set for 8. 7 showed up. Steve, naturally, was the missing one. Tyler kept checking his phone between bites of mashed potatoes, smiling awkwardly every time the waitress refilled his water. He's probably just stuck in traffic, he said around the 3rd time someone looked at the empty chair beside him. He's got a buddy with a car dealership south of here. Might be helping out. Denise gave Gerald a look. One of those please don't say anything looks. He didn't. He sipped his soda, nodded politely when the principal raised his glass, and when the photos started, those cheap printed ones with Tyler from kindergarten to senior year, he clapped in the right places, smiled in the right places, didn't flinch when someone said, "Wow, you look just like your dad," and pointed to Steve's empty seat. When dessert came, Tyler leaned back, scrolling through his phone under the table. He texted. Says he got caught up, but he'll definitely be there tomorrow. Promised. Gerald nodded. Good. And that was it. He left early, quietly, drove back to the cabin with the windows down, letting the cool air slap against his face. The gravel crackled under his tires like bones breaking, small, dry, inevitable. The lake was still. Not peaceful, still. Like it was watching him. He sat on the porch in a wooden chair that wobbled just slightly, but not enough to matter. The moon hung low, dull and yellow like a bruise healing slowly. No music. No alcohol. Just Gerald, a thermos of lukewarm coffee, and that thick envelope resting beside him on a chipped side table. He picked it up, turned it over in his hands like it was a newborn or a weapon. After a while, he opened it again, pulled out each page, smoothed them gently, one at a time, like laying out years of invisible labor for inspection. The adoption certificate, the tuition receipts, the handwritten letter, the trust clause. It felt almost complete. Almost. So he went inside, found the motel stationery, paper so thin the ink nearly bled through, and wrote something in the same unhurried hand he used when balancing checkbooks. This is everything you never asked about, but it was always yours. I hope someday you understand what it cost. He didn't sign it. He folded it once, neatly, slipped it in at the top. Then he resealed the envelope and leaned back in the chair, hands crossed over his chest. No sadness, no regret, just quiet understanding. Tyler had made a choice. So had Gerald. The only difference was, Gerald's came with documentation. The auditorium smelled like a mix of fresh carnations, hairspray, and anticipation. People were packed elbow to elbow, camera flashes popping like popcorn. Parents waved wildly from the seats like stranded castaways trying to flag down a rescue plane. Names were being read one after another in sharp cadence, each followed by a polite roar of applause. Denise sat 4 rows from the stage, perched on the edge of her seat, knuckles white on the armrests. Her carefully done makeup couldn't quite hide the tension climbing up her neck like ivy. Every 2 minutes, she looked toward the side entrance. No Steve. Tyler was in the front row with the rest of the graduates, his maroon cap already tilted slightly to one side. He was trying to look calm, legs stretched out, arms crossed, but every 10 seconds, he peeked at his phone, swiping the lock screen to refresh a notification that wasn't coming. Gerald? Gerald was in the very last row. Alone. The only man in a blazer while most dads had gone full summer casual. His jacket was buttoned, the envelope pressed snug against his ribs like a second spine. He didn't wave when Tyler glanced his way. Didn't smile. Just sat, upright, unmoved. The name reading droned on. Denise leaned toward the principal at one point, whispering something with a forced grin. A teacher patted her on the arm. Sympathy in formal wear. Tyler kept checking the side door. Still no Steve. Still no real dad. Finally, the announcer cleared her throat and called. Tyler Richards. The auditorium erupted cheers, claps, camera shutters. Tyler stood, straightened his gown, cast one last desperate glance at the door. Empty. And then he walked across the stage, smile plastered on like a borrowed face. Someone shouted his name from the back, one of his buddies from the basketball team. Gerald didn't move until Tyler reached center stage, shook the principal's hand, and posed for the photo with his diploma. Then, with the silence of a decision already made, Gerald rose from the last row. He moved through the aisle slowly, each step unhurried. Not theatrical, not angry, just deliberate. The envelope inside his jacket thudded softly against his chest with every stride. Parents turned to look. Teachers paused mid-applause. Denise twisted around in her chair, eyes wide. Gerald didn't break stride. He walked toward the front, toward the boy who'd once sat on his shoulders during fireworks, the boy who scraped his knees on the driveway and cried for Dad, not for Steve. Toward the boy who had no idea his version of the truth was about to cave in on itself. Tyler stepped off the stage with his diploma in hand, still smiling, still scanning the crowd with hope slowly leaking out of him like air from a slashed tire. No Steve. Not even a text. Just the hollow weight of his name being cheered by people who didn't know half the story and who, in about 30 seconds, wouldn't know what to make of the other half. He didn't see Gerald until he was right there. Not beside him. Not blocking him. Just there, like a memory made flesh. Gerald didn't say congratulations. Didn't pat his back or ruffle his gown. He didn't even touch him. He simply reached inside his blazer and pulled out the envelope, thick, sealed, silent. The kind of object that feels heavier than it should, like it's carrying more than paper. He held it out. Tyler blinked. "What is?" Gerald leaned in, close enough for only him to hear, and whispered, "Read this when you're ready. Or don't." No anger, no emotion, just choice. Then he turned and walked away. Not fast, not slow, just steady, like he'd already rehearsed it. Tyler stood frozen mid-step, the envelope now in his hand, the diploma tucked awkwardly under his arm like an afterthought. A few people clapped out of habit, unsure what they'd just seen. A woman in the front row tilted her head. Two students in the wings whispered behind cupped hands. The cameras kept flashing. And suddenly, Tyler wasn't sure what they were capturing anymore. Denise was halfway out of her seat, confusion etched across her face. One of Tyler's classmates nudged him. "Dude, what was that?" But Tyler didn't answer. His fingers gripped the envelope like it might detonate. The ceremony moved on without him. Another name was called. Another cheer. But he didn't move. For the first time that day, he didn't check his phone. Didn't scan for Steve. He just stared at the envelope, pulse thumping in his ears. And everything around him started to sound distant, like the moment before a crash. Backstage smelled like hairspray, floor wax, and sweat. Everyone clapping each other on the back, laughing too loud, hugging like the world had just opened for them. But Tyler wasn't part of that celebration. He slipped behind a row of folding chairs, ducking past the assistant principal and the AV kid wheeling a speaker. His hands shook as he tore into the envelope like it might be full of cash or fire, or both. The first thing he saw was his own name, full and formal, Tyler James Richards. Legal paperwork, stamped and notarized. Adoption decree, dated 15 years ago. His heart skipped. Steve's name wasn't on it. Father, Gerald Wayne Richards. He blinked. Read it again. Below that, page after page, pediatric care receipts, orthodontic bills, school fees, summer camp deposits. All in Gerald's name. No reimbursements. No cosigners. One after another. 15 years of quiet deposits into a life that Tyler had never bothered to ask about. His knees buckled slightly. He crouched against the wall. The next page was a printout of a trust document, bold and legal in tone. Highlighted. Clause 7C, Revocation of Beneficiary Rights. Dated. Signed. Witnessed. 2 days ago. A sticky note was attached to the corner in Gerald's handwriting. It was never about money. It was about memory. You traded both. Tyler's chest tightened. Then came the photos. Not selfies. Not posed. Just snapshots Gerald had clearly taken over the years, alone. Tyler blowing out candles at age 7. No Steve. Tyler in his Halloween costume, dressed as a knight. No Steve. Tyler holding a trophy at his first track meet. No Steve. And then one brutal picture. Denise and Tyler at age 10, opening Christmas presents. In the corner, just barely visible, was Steve's name on a gift tag that Gerald had clearly written by hand and delivered, while Steve never showed. And finally, the last page. Just one line, centered. No date. No header. You chose him. So I removed myself. The words hit harder than anything Tyler had prepared for. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't stand. The noise of the crowd outside faded into a buzz, replaced by the pressure inside his chest, like everything he thought he understood had collapsed inward. He had wanted a headline, a name, a title, Real Dad, something to look cool in photos. Instead, he'd burned the only man who ever stood in the fire with him. He clutched the envelope like a life raft that came too late. Steve hadn't shown. Again. But Gerald had. Until now. Tyler burst through the auditorium's back doors like something was on fire, suit half-buttoned, tassel bouncing, diploma nearly forgotten in one hand, the envelope clutched like a wound in the other. The parking lot was full of families hugging under helium balloons, posing for iPhone photos, laughing about missed names and awkward speeches. He scanned the rows. Gerald's truck was gone. "Mom!" he shouted, spinning in place. Denise was standing by the curb, surrounded by 2 aunts and a neighbor she barely liked. Her mascara had given up halfway down her cheek. Her expression collapsed the moment she saw him. "He's gone," she whispered. "You let him leave?" Tyler snapped. What was I supposed to do? Tie him to the bleachers? She fired back, her voice cracking. You made your choice, Tyler. And he honored it. The ants turned away, suddenly very interested in their clutch purses. Guests nearby lowered their voices. Someone whispered, wasn't that his stepdad? Tyler's phone buzzed, finally. He yanked it up. It was a spam email. No texts. No calls. Nothing from Steve. Of course not. He pulled up Gerald's number. Hit dial. 1 ring. 2. Straight to voicemail. He stared at the screen like he could will it to change. Like if he wanted it badly enough, maybe time would rewind and the envelope would vanish and Gerald would be standing right there, arms crossed, grumbling about the traffic. He typed a message anyway. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Please come back. You're my real dad. He hit send. Then watched it sit there with that smug little delivered checkmark, like a doorman who opens the lobby but won't let you in. Minutes passed. Then more. No reply. The crowd thinned. Cars rolled out in slow processions of honking horns and trailing streamers. Denise sat down on the curb, crying in hard, wet gasps, alone in her own spiral of guilt. But Tyler didn't comfort her. He just stood there, staring at nothing. The diploma was bent now. Useless. Cheap paper in a broken frame of assumptions. Steve had never come, but Gerald had. Gerald had come to every spelling bee, every Sunday night stomach flu, every dad, can you pick me up early? Gerald had come and stayed and paid and listened and showed up again and again. Until now. And now? Now he was gone. Not absent. Not missing. Gone. Because Tyler had walked him to the exit with both eyes open and a grin on his face. He didn't just lose a father today. He chose to lose the only one he ever had. And that? That couldn't be texted away. It took him weeks to open the envelope again. It sat on his desk like a warning label, like something radioactive sealed in manila paper. He couldn't look at it without his throat tightening. Couldn't touch it without his fingers going cold. He told himself he'd already read everything inside. That the damage was done. That what Gerald wanted him to know had already been said. In ink, in silence, in absence. But on a rainy Thursday evening, 3 weeks after graduation, the envelope caught the corner of his sleeve and hit the floor. It slid open slightly on impact. A page peeked out. One he hadn't seen before. Folded in thirds. Old paper, yellowed at the edges. His heart jumped before his fingers did. He sat on his bed and unfolded it slowly, like opening a wound that had scabbed but never healed. It wasn't typed. It wasn't dated. The handwriting was careful, except near the end, where the lines had started to tremble. I don't need thanks. I don't need a Father's Day card or a mention in your bio. I just need you to remember who stood by you when no one else did, who filled out the emergency contact forms, who held the bike seat until you could balance, who didn't leave, even when he had every reason to. Tyler's vision blurred. You may forget everything I paid, but I hope you don't forget everything I stayed. At the bottom, in faint, shaky ink. Goodbye, son. Live well. That last line didn't slap. It didn't scream. It settled, like dust, final and undisturbed. Tyler sat alone on the rusting bleachers behind the high school that night, hood up against the drizzle, the letter in one hand and his future in the other, and for the first time in his life, no one to call. No applause. No audience. Just a boy who thought he was a man until a real one walked away. He wept there quietly, not because Gerald was angry, but because Gerald had finished loving him, and left nothing behind but proof that it was love. Not revenge, not punishment, just closure. And now, there was nothing to fix. No way back, no thread to pull. It wasn't an explosion. It was erasure, and it was final.